By Jove, Michigan did it. They found a way not only to beat Purdue last night, but to beat Maryland today. They are going to the Big Ten tournament championship game to face the 5-seed Wisconsin for an opportunity to make good on what has been an absolutely phenomenal season by Dusty May. Let's talk about the game, about the last 2 days, what we've seen from the Wolverines right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Saturday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. It's kind of funny because I purposefully ended up taking Thursday and Friday off because I had a feeling that I was going to want to do episodes today and tomorrow. So we will do an episode tomorrow, regardless of what happens. That may or may not be the mailbag. We might do the mailbag on Monday, depending on what Michigan basketball does, I think. But amazing job by Michigan to win 81-80 after yesterday's 86-68 win over Purdue. This was such an interesting game, especially coming after Friday's game. So since we didn't talk about Friday's game, we can kind of do both a little bit, because what were the things that we talked about early in the week that we needed to see? And it was kind of having that reset, having that time to reset and look like what we had seen from Michigan basketball all year up until the last month. And that's precisely what we've seen, for better and for worse, actually. Because you look at the for better, you look at yesterday's game and all of the ways like that they were with the ball movement, the shooting was on key, right? Like there was really no point in the game, I felt, watching Friday night's game, that I didn't really ever feel like Michigan was going to lose that game. They just looked like the better team. And it's amazing to go back to January and think about the fact that Michigan got just absolutely annihilated by that same Purdue team, and now has won the last two. I mean, it just felt like that game on January 24th, which, by the way, was the last time that Roddy Gale hit a three-pointer, and he hit one today. That's kind of amazing. But it's like when you think about January 24th, it kind of felt like, okay, Michigan's not ready for this, right? Like they can go and they can beat an Oklahoma team, which was ranked at the time, and that looked like really good. They had some early wins, or even some of the losses at the very beginning of the year were like, well, that's actually a quality loss. And then those teams kind of fell off. And then when Michigan had to go up against like the creme de la creme in the Big Ten, it was like, okay, yeah, they're not there yet. And it still was certainly feeling like that late in the year with the 3 losses, losing to a middling Illinois team that Michigan just cannot seem to beat, no matter who the coach is these days, no matter what Illinois is. And, to this Maryland team, it just ended up beating to Michigan State, having, because it kind of started with that first Michigan State game at Chrysler, where it felt like everything was falling apart, in that game. And they never really rebounded because the wins against Nebraska and Rutgers were like, those were games where you'd look and say on paper, like, yeah, Michigan should win this by double digits. And it's like they're hanging on for dear life. So for them to win the last 2 games how they have now, this game could have been, and it looks kind of in some ways similar to what we saw last night. Now, obviously, they had their turnover issues in this game compared to yesterday. 6 turnovers overall yesterday. They hit that number like 30 seconds into this game, right? Like just carelessly stepping out of bounds, just constantly questionable charges and stuff like that. Kind of put Michigan at a disadvantage in this game here. But the ball movement was still there. There were some moments where the offense in today's game kind of lost the plot for a little while. That was when Danny Wolf and Trey Donaldson were on the bench. But the fact that we're talking about Trey Donaldson needing to be in the game is a sizable improvement. What a game for Trey, man. He opens up the game with the 3. He hits the 3 with 28 seconds left. He then gets the coast-to-coast, the end-to-end game winner, where it was just like a hot knife through butter right through the heart of the entire Terps team to be able to win the game. Because normally when you see a team having to, no timeouts, having to cross the whole court with 5 seconds left, you'd look at that and say, there's no way they're winning that game. kind of how it felt for a minute when Reuben Jones fouled out and they sent, what's his name, Derek Queen to the line, who was just balling out for them with 31 points. The fact that Trey was like, all right, I got this. I mean, it's a little bit of redemption based off of how the latter part of the season has gone. As my good friend Steve Dasa tweeted out, like, he was like statistically the worst point guard in the conference. So for him to come on, and it's not like he lit it up points wise. I think he had 12 points in the game. Yeah, 12 points. Like, to see like what he did as well as what Roddy Gale did with 9 points. I mean, both of them, like, they both have had 2 really good games. My 5 takeaways for both games were like, those guys were on fire. They gave you something that they needed to give. Roddy Gale was 4 from 8. Hit the 1 3-pointer. That feels like a world's difference. On top of that, got to go to the free throw line a lot yesterday, not today. Just showed the ability to cut and do all these things. It's starting to get stormy, so Zuri might join the show here. But just amazing by them. Meanwhile, you look at the fact that the first like 15 minutes of the game, Vlad had 2 points. He finishes with 25, a team leading 25, and just really when Michigan needed him, especially from the free throw line, made things go because he was the only one that was doing anything in that stretch when Trey and Danny were sitting on the bench. And Michigan couldn't score. They went in 6+ minutes. It was close to 7 minutes without a field goal. The only thing that kept them alive in a lot of ways was Vlad, because in that stretch, because remember, Michigan went up 11. They were up 15. That went down to, they were up 8, and then they went back up to 11. I think they were only up by 5. Then they went up to 11, and it felt like, man, they're just punking these guys. And then they couldn't score. No one seemed to be able to do anything. It's like Will Shedder gets the basketball underneath the basket, and it's just like a flail fest. And this isn't a knock on Will Shedder. It was just like there was nothing that was working at that point. And Vlad Goldin is the one who kind of really kept Michigan in it. There were points when Michigan wasn't scoring where, hey, they just retook the lead. Like when Danny comes back in, he ends up retaking the lead on a free throw. And you're like, okay, maybe everything's fine. And the fact that they were able to hang on was just absolutely amazing. Lots of disparities in this game and some interesting things that could bode well for the future. And I'm not just talking about tomorrow. I'm talking about the big dance, March Madness, place we haven't seen Michigan in a few minutes. So excited to get to that. So we're going to talk about the disparities, the things that you'd look at and say, that might be a good omen. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But before you do, ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Yeah, I do that often. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. With surprising insights, like when you start using Monarch, you realize just how much money you're spending on food delivery. Actually, I know how much money I'm spending on that, quite a bit. Now I budget smarter and save more. And with the convenience of it, instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, we're going to continue on here in just a moment, but first, if you're looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I've tried the Calorie Smart, and back when Sarah and I were together, she was trying them, and she loved them. I love them. They're packed with flavor and kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off and use the code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. I had like literally like 3 or 4 months where Zuri I do the podcast and she's like, cool, I got the spot on the couch that you normally occupy. And like the 3 times this week, she's just like, no, I gotta be here in the studio, which was how she used to be. But that made sense in Ann Arbor because I had it in the basement. So she's like, what? I'm not going to sit up in the living room. We'll see if she jumps up on my lap again. Anyway, huge win for Michigan. Huge two wins, right? Like I felt pretty, it's funny because like I said, it was somewhat of a prescient thought. I thought, okay, if nothing else, we're going to have a basketball show on Saturday night. Even if Michigan loses, I had a feeling they were going to beat Purdue. I had a feeling they weren't going to look the way that they've looked through the last month. And I thought that they were going to rebound a bit. I thought a lot of what we had talked about with the last basketball show, I thought we were going to see some actual improvements, and we did. I was unsure about today until a couple minutes in, and it just kind of felt like, okay, Michigan's if this isn't going to be, even with the turnovers, this wasn't going to be a thing. And the big reason why I feel optimistic, Michigan often in a lot of these games doesn't play physical enough to contend with the other Big Ten teams, right? Like you look at like Michigan State, when we did the post Michigan State podcast, the first game, the big disparity was rebounding in a bad way for Michigan. Michigan got out rebounded by like 10 or 15. And even at one point, like they were down like 15, and then suddenly it was like, oh, now they're only, they climbed back in the game. They were only down by like 5. And then Michigan State again, just, was able to get there and fight to get the basketball. If you didn't box score watch or you just didn't notice, because like Michigan had some really great disparities against Purdue. Rebounding was great against Purdue. Assists was great against Purdue. The rebounding in particular, a lot better even in this game. Michigan had 47 rebounds compared to 18 by Maryland. 47 to 18. That said, you would hope that would generally mean a blowout situation, because Michigan only got off 5 more shots total than Maryland, and they had a higher shooting percentage by 3 points, almost 3 full points, 2.7. So obviously the other disparity, the bad disparity, is the turnovers and the fouls. They went to the stripe 10 more times than Michigan did, and I'd say some of those were a little bit negligible, right? Like you look at Derek Queen tripping over himself. It didn't look like Vlad Goldin had touched him, and he gets called for the foul. Like the one where the announcers had even said that one could go either way, where it looked like he was going to get the bucket in the and one. They call it an offensive foul. Some of those things I think were a little ticky-tack, and there was just, it was pretty early, in the early going, it was like, okay, Michigan's going to send Maryland to the line a lot. And I don't think that was necessarily warranted. I'm not Mr. Complain about the refs, but it just felt like that whistle went one way most of the time, and Michigan found itself facing Maryland being in the bonus relatively early in both halves. Not great, but the physicality part, as long as Michigan can get just a borderline fair whistle, it doesn't have to be like a truly 100% fair whistle. Michigan get a borderline fair whistle, they will be at a good spot if they continue to rebound the way they have. They had 18 offensive rebounds. They had, I think, 30, or it was like 28. I don't have the same screen I had up when I was writing the articles, but something like 28 or 30 second chance points. The problem is that Maryland got 29 points off of turnovers, right? Maryland only turned the ball over like 6 times. Michigan wasn't necessarily having the errant pass turnover problem. It was partially the fouls. Partially, it was a lot of the like, hey, I'm just going to get my toe on out of bounds type of thing, right? Like we're going to run the fine line here, or walk the narrow path, and find ourselves in a situation that isn't necessarily going to bode well. So they've got to clean that up, right? Because Maryland's a dangerous team, and the fact that you were able to hang on to win, despite having, was it 19 turnovers? Yeah, 19 turnovers to their, I think I said 6. Yep, 6. I mean, that's pretty great. Maryland did excellent in terms of blocks and stuff like that. Michigan only had 3 blocks, or 2 blocks. 2 blocks to Maryland's 6 on the day. But it wasn't, Michigan had 3 steals to Maryland's 7. So, I mean, they still got their hands on the ball. But nonetheless, like, I think that you would have liked to see a little bit more of kind of what Dusty May had said the plan was in the Purdue game. Essentially, dribble once and then look for the next guy. They didn't really feel like they were playing that same game that they played against Purdue today. But I do think that that's a that bodes well, the fact that if you can have games like Purdue where you're not turning the ball over with impunity and you can out rebound the other team, like if they don't turn the ball over the way they did, even with the foul trouble, this game's just a complete, walk away domination. So I think that bodes well for Michigan. The other thing I think bodes well for Michigan is that this was like a vintage 2/3 of the season game for the Wolverines. I tweeted that out, and it was funny because for whatever reason, a Buckeye got really mad at that. Said Michigan needs better fans. But if you watched any Michigan basketball, you know that this was a vintage Michigan basketball game in a lot of ways. The only thing it was missing was it didn't get that 15-point lead in the first half and then start giving it up early in the second, and then you find yourself in a dogfight for the rest of the game. But it was kind of that typical Michigan game where it's like, okay, Michigan looks like the better team. Oh, look, they are in double digits, and now it feels like there's no way they can't win. Oh, now look, Michigan is currently losing, and then they find a way to win, right? Like there's the people that like to use the chart of like where your emotions are during the game, where it's like okay, the game has started. Oh, well, this is the best team ever. I hate everything. And oh, good, we won, right? Like that's what this game was. I don't know why these Buckeyes even get involved in these things. I'm sure he was trying to insinuate something else. But nonetheless, I mean, I would rather Michigan play the style of ball, for better or worse, that we've seen all year than what we've seen the last month. Because what we saw the last month wasn't indicative of what this team is capable of at all. I'd rather us see the roller coaster that we've become accustomed to with tons of turnovers, but decent shooting, and the ability just to before you know it, the other team can't do anything. And even if they come back, I would still rather have this mixed with the physical presence in the lane. I mean, that was just excellent that they got the 18 offensive rebounds and 47 total rebounds. That's the type of effort you're going to need if you're going to make any kind of run. And now I think you go from saying that this is a team that's going to be a first weekend exit next week, still very much on the table because you don't know what you're going to get on any given day. But now that you're seeing this team play this way, you're like, they could make it to the Sweet 16. They could make it to the Elite 8. I don't know beyond that. Depends on the draw. We'll find out more tomorrow about that. But this is a team that can do some damage, and that's excellent to know. So up next, Michigan has Wisconsin tomorrow in the Big Ten Tournament Championship game. Be wary, despite Michigan having won. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. But before we do, this is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live, full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Pretty rare we can go full basketball show, but we're going to have more of these now that we're in tournament time. I don't know about you. Like, this is how I feel. I don't really care until this time of year. I just don't. And part of it is, I was saying this. Who was I saying this to? I don't remember. No offense to the person I was saying this to. But I was talking about in 2017, covering the Michigan basketball team. It was like, we were into like either late February or March. If you recall, Michigan played a Saturday night against Ohio State. And I was a little disappointed because I had 3 friends in from out of town, 1 from New York and 2 from Los Angeles. And I was excited. They went to the basketball game, and Michigan just looked terrible against a Thad Matta coached Ohio State team. And it was just like depressing. It was just one of those things that was like, they had no business losing that game. And that was kind of the whole season. That's the plane crash year, right? That was the year they won the Big Ten tournament. You know, they had the plane crash, arrived late to Washington, D.C. for the tournament, and they go to win that. And then they make it to the Sweet 16. They ended up losing to Oregon, who ended up going and winning the Elite Eight game against Kansas in Kansas City. But I just have a hard time really caring that much about the regular season when it comes to basketball. That's a part of my fear with the football of it all. If you expand it too much, I mean, now are we going to get to the point where we don't care about the regular season? No, but stop watering it down, College Football Playoff Committee. Stop watering down the whole thing. But this time of year, it's like, okay, I love this. I don't love like regular, random January game. And that's kind of why, like we get busy, especially when I'm, one man show. I'm the only one that writes for Wolverines Wire now. So I have a hard time in December covering, and even parts of January covering both football and basketball. So I just stay with football until we get to a point where I have to pay attention to basketball. So I didn't really pay much attention to Michigan's win against Wisconsin back then. Now, Wisconsin ended up being a better team than anyone thought, even at that point. Right? Like, that was a quality win. We all knew it at the time, but no one thought it was going to be as quality as it ended up being. Now, they're a 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament, but this is a much more dangerous team. We just saw them take down Michigan State. I watched the last half of that game, and I mean, that's a really, really good team. Tanjay is an amazing, amazing player. Right? There's a reason why he's a first team All Big Ten player. There's a reason why. They're going to have their hands full. This is much like Michigan needed to get its revenge. It was double revenge against Purdue because they got blown out in January and then beat them the next month in Ann Arbor. But then, lost 10 days ago to Maryland, getting the revenge there. Wisconsin wants its revenge, right? That's going to be a mental part of the game. They're going to want to avenge their loss in December to Michigan. But at the same time, like, Michigan's just going to have to continue to play its game. It's going to have to play good defense. That means getting was it 20? If they had 18, with it 18 offensive rebounds, that meant that they had 29 defensive rebounds. If math makes sense. I switched off the screen so I can't look it up. They're going to need to have that type of effort. They're going to need to be able to slow down Tanjay of all people. And they're going to need to be able to rely on more than Vlad, Goldin, and Danny Wolf. Right? Like, that's kind of where Michigan thrives. It's when it's not just those two. When Trey Donaldson can have the types of plays like he had, starting off the game with the 3, which, I mean, Goldin started off the game with the layup, but then Trey Donaldson hit the 3, and then, the exclamation point of the 3 and the game finisher, right? Having him out there able to do some of those things. Having Roddy Gale look more like himself. They're going to need some bench production. This is going to be a much harder matchup than the one in December, just because the emotions are going to be so much higher. Someone gets to walk away with the trophy and some bragging rights. So if I'm the Wolverines, you cannot turn the ball over the way you did today. Do I expect them to only get 6 turnovers? No. Let's hold it somewhere like the season average is 14, I believe. Let's hold it somewhere around like 10, just somewhere below season average, okay? And they're going to have to shoot at least the way they have the last 2 days. They cannot have a situation where these guys are not able to hit shots. Now, Wisconsin's going to be entering with a ton of confidence. They just took down the 1 seed. They want that revenge. ESPN matchup predictor has them 60-40 as the likely winner of this game. Kind of crazy. Normally wouldn't think of it that way. They're relatively even. Michigan has 1 more Big Ten win. Wisconsin's played a couple more games by being a lower seed, but they're 26-8. Michigan's 24-9. So it's kind of funny to look at it and say, like, yeah, they're the ones that are expected to win this game. But that kind of tells you the trajectory of these two teams. I think Michigan can absolutely do it. Would I predict what's going to happen? I can't, because it's been a completely different these two teams are completely different in some ways than they were before when they faced off. Now, Michigan can be what they were when they went to Madison. They can be. They just need to be. Because we've seen Michigan throughout late February, early March, not look at all like the team we watched for 2/3 of the year. So they've got to play smart. Can't turn the ball over a ton. Be physical. If you're physical, because Wisconsin's also very physical, then you're going to have a real good shot. So we will be back tomorrow, Sunday, after the game. We'll see how we kind of do it, if we're going to talk about the game and Michigan's spot in the bracket and all of that. I'm going to guess that's what's going to happen. And then, maybe we'll do the mailbag after. But if we do that, it will probably be for a Monday release. Football, spring ball stuff starts on Monday. So as far as interviews and stuff, so we'll get into that over the course of the week. So that's going to be exciting. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.